Okay. Hi. Um, I'm going to attempt to explain how to do some basic programming in Python. So, a little bit about me. I am a computer science major. I'm currently a sophomore. With my university, we're using another programming language called C++. But we're not going to talk about that language. Um, Previously, prior to going into college, I was mostly self-taught in Python. I started off programming in about middle school, I'd say. Um, and I've currently made some small little projects here and there. My bigger things have been recently developing basic Discord bots. Um, if you know me, you probably have seen my bots before. Of all kinds, or you've probably asked me to make a bot for you. And excuse me if I'm like snuffling or whatever. I had COVID, so I've fortunately I've recovered now, but I'm still kind of like congested. But anyway, so I'm gonna make some assumptions. I'm gonna assume you've never programmed that, or you've used maybe like Scratch. You might have some ideas of programming. You might have been familiar with some ideas of it, but you might have forgotten it. Um, and you've never touched like an IDE or never touched Python, you know. So with that, we're gonna cover approximately. I'm not gonna teach everything in this video, but I'm gonna teach you the bare minimums, I'd say. The essentials to kind of help you go along the way with like uh making some basic stuff. No, I'm not necessarily like expect you to make the next big thing, but if you want to make a little project uh to start off, then yeah, sure. So with that, um let's go right on ahead. So there's two ways that you can go about going with this. The first way is using an online compiler or IDE. So what you can do is you can look up like Python, like run Python code online or online Python compiler. Um, I recommend for newbies pythontutor.com. Um, it'll go through step by step your code. So if you're having a problem with it, it can help you learn, provided you follow it step by step. Rappel.com is another one. You'll have to make an account for it though, but I think it's very much well worth it. Um, and really, those are the two that I recommend for online. Um, and then you have offline, or not offline. I'm sorry. More like on your PC. So I'm gonna teach you how to do this. It's a bit longer to do, but this is kind of what I recommend starting off. So there's two websites that you'll have to go on to. One is required, one isn't. So the first one is python.org. So this is the official website. As you can, if you see a website like this, then you're on the right track. You can also just look up the Python programming language, Python programming, or just Python. Um, but you'll end up on this website. So what you want to do is you want to go to downloads, and then you have all this. Don't worry. What you'll want at the very top is the latest version, which is currently as of writing, or not as of writing, as of making this video, Python 3.10.2. Essentially, if you want to download 3.10, you absolutely can. Just make sure, generally saying, make sure you have 3 point something, and you're good. Because Python 2, as we know it, has reached end of life back in 2020. So you download it. It's an execution. I'm not going to download it again since I've already have Python installed. It may ask in the installer if you want to add Python to path, P-A-T-H in all caps. Click that option, and then let the downloader do its thing, and you'll know you'll have it correct when, if you go into your command prompt, if you type in Python, I'll type in Python 3. You'll see Python and then the version number. So I currently have 3.9.7, but that is perfectly fine. And you'll have this window. So this means you're now in like Python's like menu, I guess you could say. So if you see this, perfect. So what you can do is you do exit with close parentheses, open close like this, and enter, and then you're good. You can close it out. So this you're going to have to need if you want to work with Python on your PC directly without having to use like an online compiler of any sort. So the next one the next thing that you need is what's called an IDE. This is basically the software that programmers and software engineers use for developing programs. You can say this is kind of like how DAWs are to musicians, such as like FL Studio and Ableton. Very powerful tools, but also very expensive most of the time. Fortunately, we're not gonna have to spend any money, so good. There's several of these IDEs and code editors and script editors. The one I'm going to be using, though, and the one that I kind of recommend for people, provided you're on like a Windows environment or I think Mac as well, is Visual Studio. So this is made by Microsoft. Currently, the newest version just released. I think it's Visual Studio's 2022. I'm not going to be using that one, though. I'm going to be using Visual Studio's 2020, I believe, or 2019. It doesn't really matter, though. Now, the thing is that if you're on this website, you can just go to like Free Visual Studio, and you have these community editions, and they're completely free, no strings attached. And really, that's all we need. Now, if I remember correctly, when you download this, it'll ask like what environments you're going to be doing, like different programming languages and whatnot. You're looking for Python. I'm not going to download this since I already have it downloaded. But keep in mind that there is you have to be careful, because if you're not paying attention and you go by, you won't be able to do stuff in Python. You'll be stuck in like C# and like C++ and Visual Basics. So make sure when it asks like what things you would have installed, make sure you install the things necessary for Python. So with that, we are good to go on actually writing code. So I'm going to open my Visual Studios, and it's actually 2019 edition. There might be some differences between what I have and what you have, because since I am a college student majoring in computer science, I get to have the Enterprise Edition for free. So I get to have the nice $2,000 program for free. Oh, and I should also mention this too. I should have mentioned it beforehand. If you do not like Visual Studios, if you don't want to use Visual Studios, that's perfectly fine. There might be some discrepancies between what I'm seeing and how I do things, and what you're seeing and what you do. Another alternative I would recommend is that's my wrong window. My bad. It's called PyCharm. So PyCharm is made by this company called JetBrains. Just like Visual Studios, there is a free community edition. And it's the same thing with me. Since I am a college student, I get to have the entirety of JetBrains software for free. But there is a community edition that you get to download, and it is open source, or at least build on it. So just hit Community Edition and you can download it, and it is available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. For Visual Studios, it is only available on Windows and Mac. If you're running on Linux, you are forced to use Visual Studio Code. So, if you're on Linux, just use PyCharm. So back to what I was going with Visual Studios. Assuming you have your Python files, the things necessary for Visual Studios to do Python development installed correctly, then what you should be able to do is create a new project. Now you have all of these. So ignore recent project templates. But if you go here and you see Python, then you're good. We're going to ignore all these at the bottom. We're not going to deal with all these. We're going to go to Python application. So this is basically a blank project where we can use, it'll show things in a command prompt. So we're going to click on it, hit next. It's going to ask for a project name. You can name it whatever you want. I'm not going to name it anything. I'm just going to keep it Python application 4. It'll ask for a location. Don't worry about it. Solution name, don't worry about that either. And hit create. And now we're ready. So now that we have our Python installation and our IDE installed and up and running, we talk about actually programming. So first thing we're going to be talking about is variables. Now, there are some rules to Python variables. If I remember correctly, they cannot start with a number or symbols, and I don't think they can be named after common like types for things in Python. So you can't name it like def, and I'll explain what that is later on. But you can name it anything else. One method that I recommend for people that are starting is to use what is called, I think it's called the Hungarian method. So I'll explain that as we go. But I'm going to teach 4 variable types just for now. So we're going to start off with strings. So strings in Python with the Hungarian notation, you could just use str, and then you can name it whatever you want afterwards with a capital letter. So we'll go with hello, space, equal sign, space, and then we're gonna do a quotation, and as you can see, Visual Studios gives us 2, which is very convenient, and we can set this to be like hello world, just like this. Next, we have characters, or char. So these are usually like ch or chr, and we'll let it be the letter. The difference between a string and a character is a string can hold like multiple letters, multiple like a sentence, if you will. Imagine like a sentence. Imagine character like one of those like blocks they use for printing books. It's like this one letter, and that's it. Now you can use like quotation marks like this. However, from what I understand, it is general good practice to instead differentiate between your characters and your strings by using for characters a like apostrophe, and you can make it like an A or capitalized or whatever. So we'll have this be the letter A. Next, we have integer. So with Hungarian, that is int, int, and we'll call it number or just num. Now these, it must be a whole number. It can be any like real number essentially, whole integer real number. No decimals, no fractions. It can be positive or negative. So I can make it be 45. I can make it be negative 45. I cannot make it negative 0.45. This is something different, and I'm not going to talk about it for now. So we'll just set it to 45 for now. Finally, we have what's called a Boolean. So in Hungarian, we do it like bool. And we can name this like true. In Python, we do Booleans like this. We have a capital letter first and then the rest. And Boolean can only have two like states. It can be either true or it can be false. It is binary. So true, false. And that's it. So we'll set it to true. And now what we can do is we can do something very simple. I think this is like a little first flight test, I guess. This is a good test to see if your Python works properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to print out string hello up here. So here's how we do it. We're going to do print parentheses, and we're going to type in string hello, just like this. That is one way you can do this, I will say, but cover that in a little bit. Hit start. Let's see. All right, so yeah, my Visual Studio was complaining that apparently this environment that I made doesn't exist, but it's okay. Let's see if I can do this. Existing, and then we're gonna go with 3.9. Cool. Yeah. So if Python says like this doesn't exist, if Visual Studio says this doesn't exist, just hit up here, where it's like the present. Click on it, and it brings up this window for me off to the right hand side, but it's like existing environments. And or I'm sorry, go here, hit add environment, and then hit existing environment, and you might only see one where it's like Python 3. Whatever, 3.10, 3.9. I have different versions of Python installed, so don't worry. Hopefully you shouldn't have this problem. So we're gonna try this again. There we go. Hello world, capital H, capital W with a space, just like as it is here. Simple. And that's your first program if you did it right. So good job on you. Now, print is special because you are not only restricted to variables like this. You can just simply replace this and just do hello world, and we'll just differentiate it by doing an exclamation mark at the end. So we hit start. There's a little exclamation mark, just as we did in print. Simple. So we have this. Now we're going to talk next about basic math functions. Hopefully you pay attention to your math class and you have some basic ideas of like, let's say, middle school math. Shouldn't be that big of a problem. So we're going to talk about the basics, and these are built in Python. So we have our addition. So that's basically, 3 plus 5, and this will be equal to 8. Simple. So what we'll do is to show this, right? I'll create two integers. We'll name one A, and we'll set this to 10, and we'll set in B, and we'll set this one to 13. Cool. So if we do, let's see, print int A plus, plus int B, we should have this work. See? 10 and 3 makes 23. Simple. Next, we have subtraction. So we should get -3. There we go. We can also do multiplication and division. So multiplication in Python is an asterisk. So 10 and 13 should be 130. Yep. Next, we have division. Now, division can be weird because if we do A over B, 10 and 13, we should get a decimal number. But since Python sees these as integers, they must be whole numbers. It's not going to give us that. And we'll find out what that gives. I'll leave that up to a surprise. So, it appears I've made a mistake. This is okay, though. It's fine. It's been a while since I've done basic stuff like this. So, essentially what happened is Python recognized the fact that these two numbers, when you do division, it gave it made it what's called a float value. So what that is, it's basically a way for computers to calculate decimals. So that's what it gave here. And if I open my calculator and I do, 10 over 13, it's the same thing. 0.76923, blah, blah, blah. So we have that. Next, we have what's called modulus or modulo. So basically what this does is that it does a division. It's basically, it returns the remainder from a division. So if we do this, we're going to get 10. Simple. Next, we have what's called exponent. So exponent, we just do this. And this will see this as 10 to the 13th. So it should be 1 with 13 zeros. That's 13 zeros. And next, we have one finally called floored division. So how this works, let's see if I can open Paint and show you. So essentially what it does, or actually I'm not going to use explain with Paint. So with floored division, how it works is if it is a decimal number, it'll round it down. Yeah. So remember when we did 10 over 13 and we got 0.769. Now, if you remember your math and rounding, 0.769 is closer to 1 than 0. So you would round this up to 1. But since we were doing what's called flooring, it just drops it to the lowest number that it can be, which for 0.769 would be 0. So there's that. Next up, we have what's called comparison module operators. So again, this should be some simple, this is like basic math stuff. So let's see if we can do equals like this. So equals to is just two equal signs. And it makes sense because as you can see with our variable declarations, we only use one equal sign. So when you want to compare two values, you need to be careful with this. You need to make sure that it's two equal signs. Because if you don't, and let's say I move it out of here and I do int a equals int b, right? And then I ask the Python to print out the value of a, we get 13, which isn't what we wanted it to be. We wanted it to be 10. And the reason that happens is because we're basically saying, Python, whatever int a is, ignore the value and set it to whatever int b is. And we have int b set to 13. So it makes int a into 13. So now we have two 13s instead of one. So you need to be careful. So first, like I said, so we have equals. So we can do int b like this. So basically what we're saying is int a equal to int b? And 10 is not equal to 13. So we're going to get no. So let's say false. Now the thing is that this is a Boolean value. As you can tell because it says false and it's a capital F. This is very important, so keep this in the back of your head for now. We're not going to talk about it later. Just for now, don't worry about it. Next, we have the negator, I guess you could say. So this is if the values are different, then it says true. And there's two ways of doing this. The first way is like this with an exclamation and then an equal sign. So if I start it, we should get true, as we do. Another way you can do this is by doing the two less than or equal to signs, like this. Oh, actually, yeah, I stand corrected. Okay. I could have sworn that this was a thing in Python, but I guess not. Next up, we have less than or greater than. So, simple stuff. In A is not greater than B. 10 is less than 3. We get false. If I swap it around to be int A is less than int B, we get true. And then we have greater than or equal to, which is the same thing. If we have both of these set to like 13 or 10, either one, and we do greater than or equal to, we'll get that. Oh, sorry. Cool. So, next thing, we're going to be talking about what is called modules. Now, I'm not going to go super, super deep into modules. And that's primarily because there is a lot. A lot. I'll talk about... I'll give one as an example. So let's close this out. So we're going to import. So we're going to call in a module. And a module is just... it's code that someone else wrote. And we're going to bring in their code into our project. So it makes our lives easier. Modules are your friend. So we're going to cover one that's called random. So random should be a module that came with your Python installation. And how you declare it in your project is very simple. All you do is you do import random. And there you go. There is the entire module just waiting for you. And if you're curious on what it looks like, there is a lot of information about this one module. So very helpful. And this is for generating random numbers. Now there's one in here that I want to talk about. And it's called random int or randint. So here's how we do this. So we're going to need a new variable. I'm going to call it, int A. And what we're going to do is that we're going to call in the randint function to make a number for us between 1 and 10. Now, here's how we do it. First, we type in random. Then do dot rand int. And then parentheses. And it even says right here, we get this nice little dialog box from Visual Studios. Returns random integers in range A and B, including both endpoints. So if I pick a number between 1 and 10, it can pick 1, it can pick 10, it can pick 7, 5, 3, 8, 2, 4, any of those numbers. So how we're going to do this, we do 1, comma, 10. And preferably, I like to add in a space like this. Sometimes I don't. So now, if we do print int A, we get run, we get 5. And we can do it again. And we get 8. We can do it again, one more time, get 9. So, very helpful. Now, let's say you don't need the entire random library or module. What if you don't like having to write in random dot every single time you want to get a random number? Well, fortunately, this is a thing that Python also has, and is very, very nice to have if you know exactly what you want to use. So what we're going to do is that we're going to change this import just a little bit. So here's what we do. We're going to tell Python, okay, look in the module random, and it has all these functions into it, all these like extra pieces of code that we want to use, but we only want to use one. We want to use randint. That's all we're ever going to use for now. So here's how we do it. From random, import randint. Just like that. And if you want to bring in another one, then just do from random, import, then another one if you want. But I'm not going to do that. So now what we can do is we can just go to our code right here where it says random.randint. We just highlight random dot, close it out. And if we run it again, same thing. We get 1, we get 5, and we get 1 again. How about that? So this is a very, very important, I'd say for your first endeavors into programming, this is a very special module if you want to do some projects. And there's a whole bunch of other ones. Some other ones that are of important notice is import sys, S-Y-S, which is system functions. Import OS is another one, I believe, and import math, which has some more advanced math functions, like some trigonometry functions and a proper function that does flooring and ceiling. All right. Next up, we're going to be talking about loops. So we could write code that goes from at the very top and goes all the way down. It'd be very easy. On one hand, very straightforward. You know, you could get your finger and you can trace the code as it runs along, provided you could. But the thing is that it'd be very long. It'd be very difficult to do. So this is where we have loops. So we can do some basic, loops in Python. So we're going to start off with what's called a while loop. So let's say we want, we want the computer to give us 5 random numbers from 1 to 100. Should be very simple to do. So here's one way you could do it. So let's create a new integer, calling it a, and we're going to set it to the number 1. So next we're going to declare our loop. We're going to declare our while loop, and this is very simple. So what we're going to do is that we're going to do while int a is less than 5. Now, what we're going to do is, but I forgot, we need to include our random number, like our random integer. So we're going to do from random import randint. Remember, you have to do this if you want to use random integer. You can either do from random, or you can do import random, import random. So we have to do while int a is less than 5, and we need to include a colon at the end. So that's important. We do this, we hit enter. Now it's indented over. So this is explaining to Python now, okay, this is what you do with this while loop. This is what you do so long int a is less than 5. So what we're going to do is that we're going to print And this is where print gets very, very special. So we can just do a random number just off of it like this. So we can do rand int 1 to 100. And then we can do what's called concatenation. So basically what concatenation is that we get two separate things and we put them together. Very simple. So we're going to do plus and then quotation mark /n. Simple. Then what we're going to do is that we're going to do what's called a assignment operator. So you could just do int a equals int a plus 1 like this. Like that. This could work totally fine. Matter of fact, let's run it. And it didn't like that actually. Okay, I know what it is. Yeah, so I made a mistake. My bad. Sorry. So what we have to do, I don't know why it's still here. Go away. Thank you. So, and I should actually step in and say this. You're going to make mistakes. I still make mistakes, and that is perfectly fine. When you are programming, you need to realize that you can make mistakes. It is perfectly fine. Matter of fact, if you don't make mistakes, you're doing something wrong. Because if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. And if you're not learning, you're not becoming better at yourself. So you need, if it says something bad happened, don't let it get to you. Let it be a learning advice. If it still wants to complain about you, just look up the error code. Just say like, type in Google like Python, blah, 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 blah. And you'll probably find an answer online. And then just when you find an answer, keep it in your head. Just whatever you do, do not let, and I cannot stress this enough again, do not let making mistakes ruin your experience. Do not let it happen. You're going to make mistakes. It happens. When you make mistakes and you learn from them, you get better. Anyway. So basically what happened was this gives us a number. This is a string. Now basically what this is basically saying make a new line. So what we need to do is we need to tell Python with our integer that's randomly made to see it and take it as a string instead. And here's how we do it. We just do str. Just like that. Or no, I'm sorry. Just like this. So you notice we have string. And then inside it, we have random integer 1 to 100. So now if we run it, we should get our numbers. We get 4 this time. And I said we wanted 5, so we're just going to raise this to 6. Again, like I said, make mistakes. We make some errors. It's whatever. So, what happened was, if we run it again now, we should have 5 random numbers. So we got 56, 24, 82, 94, and 57. Simple. Very simple. Now, earlier, before I had my whole, standing on a soapbox, we could do this. We could say, get the value of integer a, add 1, and now that's the new value for integer a. That could work. There is a slightly more optimized way of doing it. So what we do is we do int a, and then we do plus sign, the equal sign, 1. Here we run it again. We still get our 5 numbers. And I should also note too, this works the exact same with any other of the math operators we did. We can subtract it, we can add it, we can divide, multiply, exponent, floor division, any of those, it will completely work. But from my experience, we don't really use all those. We either use adding one, which is incrementing, or subtracting one. So, like I said, run it again. We get our 5 random numbers. Cool. Now, let's see. What's the next thing we have? We have lists and arrays. So, what are lists and arrays? Imagine we have boxes. And we have all these boxes like kind of chained together. Maybe they're like glued together, maybe they have string to them, whatever. Now, each box can hold one thing and one thing only. That is basically what an array is. It's just a list of things. It's just a line of things. Like those boxes. So, how we define a list or an array is a little bit different than just how we define a regular variable. So, let's create a list or an array. We're going to call it array. And we're going to call this, and what we do is that we can do a bracket, and we can put things in it. And here's how we add things. Let's say I want an array to be numbers. So we'll do 1. We'll do 2, 5, 13, 21, 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 0, 9, 5, 6, 7, 0, 9. We can keep going on and on and on and on if we want. Notice, however, each one has a comma after it. And this is so that we're telling Python, like, look, this is a new entry. This will be a new entry. And when you're done with it, you just have a closing bracket. Do not do that. Do not add a comma to the end of your array. So, what can we do with this information? Well, let's say we want to print these numbers. Fair enough. So here's this is how we do it. We're going to do what's called a for loop. Now, there's a special way of printing stuff out with an array with for loops. And here's how we do it. So we can do for x in array. For x in array. End of file parsing. That's fine. So we can do print string and then array, another parentheses, or no, I'm sorry, like this. I believe. I think this. I think I'm thinking like this in C++. So again, if this is wrong, I'm sorry. X. If I remember correctly, it might complain. Yep. It complained. Let me think about this real quick. Okay. Yeah, I made a mistake. Again, it's perfectly fine. This is okay. Basically, what we can do is, so we have, for x in array, we can do string x. Fun. And we have our numbers. 1, 2, 5, 13, 21, 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 0, 9, 5, 6, 7, 0, 9. Easy peasy. pretty straightforward. Now, it doesn't have to be numbers. Doesn't have to be. We can set this to be letters. We can set it to be strings. We can set it to be Boolean values. Anything, any previously stated data type will work. So let's see what we can add. Let's see what happens if we add like a string. Let's say hi. What'll happen? Let's see what happens. Still prints it. Python sees this and says this is perfectly valid. Now, really, this is just for education purposes. Realistically saying, you wouldn't do this. You wouldn't do this. So, but it is nice to know that you can put in different types of data in an array. You can have integers and strings and characters just all in one array. Simple. Easy. Now we can do some extra things with arrays. So one thing we can do is we can call the length of a list or an array. And what we do with this is, let's do just a print function. And let's say the array is plus string. We can do array dot, or I'm sorry, length, parentheses, array. And close it out like that. Again, I'm thinking like a C++ programmer. So I almost did array.length, which is how we would do it in C++. But still, it's okay. And then, if we want to be nice and like, with our punctuation, we just add a period like that. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 7 items in array. The array is 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we get the length. Another thing we can do is we can do what's called appending. Now, appending is basically what we do is we just add an item to the end of the array. So we just add a number. So let's make a new integer A, and we're going to set it to 42. So what we can do is we can do array dot append int A. So now what happens with this line is we're getting our 42 and we're just adding it at the very end. So now the computer will see 1, 2, 5, 13, 21, 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 09, 5, 6, 7, 09, 42. And we can do the same thing earlier. We can do, 4x in array, print string x. 1, 2, 5, 13, 21, 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 09, 5, 6, 7, 09, 42. Simple. What is another thing we can do? We can also do what is called pop. So I should say this with Python. So let's imagine now the array is like a list. And, a list has, let's say we go like this. We say 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 5, 4 is 13, so on and so on and so on, We're basically giving a number. Like, imagine we're giving the number a ticket. It's like, okay, your number, your first, your second, your third, your fourth. So what we can do with pop is we can essentially remove one of these numbers. What if we don't know, like, the number, right? We only know with spot. So what we can do is we just do pop. Now, while we, as humans, like to start our lists at number 1, Python and some other languages likes to start at 0. It's not really that big of a difference, but it's kind of a little comical debate in programming communities. So, actually, we'll keep this still. So, let's remove this. Nope. Remove. Let's do array. Array dot pop 0. So it'll remove 1. And it's not there anymore. It's gone. Simple. Finally, we have what's called remove. Now, remove and pop are very similar to one another in that they can remove an element from an array. The difference is that remove, we have to specify the number or whatever entry we have in an array. Pop is only the spot that it's in. So, and it's similar in vein. So what we do is we can do, array dot remove. And let's say I want to remove the number 5. Now if I run it, 5 is no longer there. And this is very basic, like, array manipulation and whatnot. Next, let's talk about input, user input. So, we can ask the user for information. So let's make a simple program that asks for the user's name and their age, and it says, okay, your name is blah, 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 and you are blah, blah, blah years old. Shouldn't be that difficult to do. So, let's get to it. So, let's create a string called name. Now, in Python, we ask for input by just doing input, like this. And what we should do as well is we should go here and do print, and we can say, what is your name? And we do /n like this. Then the computer will ask, and it'll wait for the user to type something in. Then we can do the same thing again. We do print, how old are you? Just like this. And then we do string age equals input. Again. Then we can say print, okay. So your name is, and remember we leave a space here, plus string name, plus, we'll do a comma, and you are, kind of space, plus string age, plus years old. Got it. Actually, we'll set this to a question mark. So, what is your name? My name is Jet. How old are you? I realized I made that your. It's fine though. So I'll say, my name is 20, or my age is 20. I'm tired. It's midnight. It's midnight. I've been awake for some time now. So then it's like, okay, so your name is Jet and you're 20 years old. Got it. So this is, basic, baby steps. So we can do stuff like this very simple. And the final topic that I will cover is functions. So this is a little bit difficult, but I'll try my best to explain it in a way that can be understood. So let's imagine again we're writing code, and let's say we have a function in our program. Let's say we have a thing where it gets a number, and it adds it to a number that we define. Every time there's a number that's introduced, we just add onto it. Now, we could do this every single time. So we could, let's say we add a new integer. Let's say our integer actually that we want to add onto is like, say, let's say, I don't know, 2. We're going to add 2 to every number that's introduced to the program. So we can do, say, int a equals 1. And then we can do int a plus equals int add. We could do this every single time, but it could get a little bit annoying. So this is where functions come in. Functions, imagine like there are macros on a key, like a macro button on your keyboard where they just automate something for you. Sort of like that. So let's do this. So we're going to ask the user to give us a number. Like this. And then we'll say, let's say int num equals input, right? And I'll do this just in case. Now, what we can do then is we can define the function. So here's how we do it. We'll do define or def, add, and then we'll do int. Let me make sure I'm doing this correct. Give me a moment. Cool. So let's say num like this. So now that we have this done, we do this and that. Then we can say num plus equals 2, right? And that's our function. Now that we have this, let's actually break this down. Let's break down what happened. So we are defining a function called add, and we're going to pass in something called num. It's going to be a number. And you can name this whatever you want. Preferably with Python, try to keep this like as a good hint to what this data is supposed to be, right? Don't name it like string and it's supposed to actually have a number in it. You're going to confuse yourself. So we have num. So Python is like, okay, we have a function, and this function is going to have something. It's going to have with it called num. Cool. Then we tell Python like, okay, so with this function, when it's called in and it has a number with it, and you're going to call it as num, you're going to get num, and you're going to add 2 to it. And Python's like, okay, got it. So now let's have our program call in this function. So we're going to do add int num. So now When we run the program, so far at least, the user will be asked for a number, gives a number, and at the same time afterwards, it's going to declare a function called add, which will have what's called a parameter called num, and it's just going to add 2 to that parameter value. And then we're going to call in add, and we're going to pass through int num, whatever the user just typed in. Then what we can do next is to just print again, make it as a string, int num. Start it. Give us a number. I'm going to type in 10. So if this works correctly, it should print out a 12 afterwards. Well, that wasn't right. Again, it's perfectly fine. This is totally cool. This is fine. Let's see. I must have done something wrong. Let's try this instead. Let's do this. Try starting it now. If I put in a 10, still no? As you can tell, it's been a while since I had to do stuff like this with Python. So, from what I remember with C++ and whatnot, it's just this straightforward. Let's try num equals num plus 2. Let's try working this just a little bit. And actually, this is a good time for me to explain something else. So, functions can return something. You know, imagine it like a black box. And we put something in it, and it gives us something else back. Completely different. It could be completely different. So, we then do just return num. Cool. And we can go here, and we can say, I don't know, int new num equals this. So now what's happening is it's like, okay, we're making a new variable called int new num, and we're going to set it to this, whatever this function returns with int num. So now we do print string int new num and run it, and I type in 10, we get 12. So there we go, that works. Again, I'll keep emphasizing this, and I want to leave these in too. I want to purposely leave these in just to show you I make mistakes. Even though I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, going for, better half of a decade now, I still make errors. I still forget things. I still stumble. And it's fine. This is not like end of the world type stuff. If you are following along with me, 1, good job. 2, I'm expecting you to make mistakes. I'm expecting you to fail. I'm expecting you to mess things up. And that is perfectly fine. I will think no different of you if you mess up on your first couple of projects and it gives you the wrong number. It doesn't run. It, crashes the PC. Something like that, Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. So, anyway, with functions, they just work like this. We define it, we give it a name, we can pass in a value if we want, and then we can return a value. Now, we don't have to do that. We don't have to follow along with this. Maybe we don't want to pass in anything at all. Maybe we don't want to return something. Maybe we do. It doesn't matter. Depends on what you want to do with it. So that should be most of the things that I wanted to cover. There's still a lot more, but I hope that with what I've explained for the past, I don't know, maybe about an hour now, you can have a basic understanding of Python and maybe do some basic manipulations of stuff. One project that I would like, if you are still here and you are interested in programming, try to make a guessing game. Okay? So let's say the program picks a random number between 1 to 6. It's like a die. And the computer asks, okay, guess the number. And the user types in a number, and it compares to see if whatever the user inputted in is what the random number is. It's a simple guessing game. That shouldn't be too difficult to do with what I've already explained. So to cover up what we just did so far, we've installed Python. We got an IDE running of your choice. We talked about declaring variables, specifically strings, characters, integers, booleans. I talked about what modules were. I talked about doing basic math functions, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, modulo, exponentials, and floor division. We talked about comparisons, which would be equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than, equal to, less than or equal to. We talked about assignment operators, which is just a fancy schmancy way of just making numbers that we have already declared do basic manipulations with them. We talked about what for loops and while loops were. We talked about lists and arrays. We talked about functions. I actually just realized there's one thing I missed. So I forgot to include this, and I am sorry. One more thing. Just one more thing. And that's if statements. I completely forgot about this. So with comparison operators, we can use those for if statements. So here's how we do it. Let's create two integers. One is 10. One is 1. Oh, 1. Oh, come on. 1. So how we define if statements in Python is very simple. We do if, and then let's say if int a is equal to int b. And we can say, we can have, if it's like, okay, if a and b are the same, we can do print the numbers are the same. And then we can do else if, which is just elif in Python, just else and if put together. So let's say, okay, what if int a is not equal to b? Then we can say print the numbers are not the same. And then finally we can do, and this is something that I consider to be good practice, have what's called just a default situation, which we just do in Python, which is else. Just like that. Else will not have a condition like these two. You know, else is like if anything above does not work, if this is the final solution, then go with this. To say print something very wrong happened. So let's think for a quick second what will happen. So we have two numbers, a and b. A is 10, b is 1. Now the program is going to run through this if statement. So, okay, let's start with this one right here. Is A related to B? Is A equal to B? Well, 10 and 1 are not the same. So it's going to say no. This is false. So we're not going to continue with this. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, else if int A is not the same as int B. Well, that one is true. 10 and 1 are not the same. So this is correct. This is right. So then it's going to say the numbers are not the same. And that's it. And let's say we have a hypothetical where this doesn't work either. Well, then it's like, okay, so if these two don't work, then we have this final one. And we're just going to print something very wrong happened. Right? So we're expecting the program to go, the numbers are not the same. Let's find out what happens. The numbers are not the same. Who would have thought? So there's that. So I'm going to cover up what we did again. So we installed Python. We installed an IDE. In this case, we installed Visual Studios. We declared variables such as strings, characters, integers, and booleans. We explained what modules were. We were able to do basic math functions such as adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, modulo, exponents, and floor division. We talked about comparison operators, which are like equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than or less than or greater than. We talked about assignment operators, which is a fancy schmancy way of just manipulating numbers that we already have. We talked about for and while loops. We talked about lists and arrays and doing some basic manipulation with them, such as finding out how long they are, adding things to the end of them, removing things out of them, and printing them out. We talked about functions, what they are, why they're helpful, how to make one. And finally, we talked about if statements. Oh, we talked about user input as well. I forgot to mention that one. We talked about user input, so we'd ask the user for information. And then we have if statements, which is just comparing things and seeing like what routes to take. Imagine these as if like it's a pick your own adventure book. And like I said, just for a friendly little project, try to make a guessing game where it's like a number is picked from 1 to 6, and the computer asks for the user to give a random or give a number. And if that number is equal to the random number, it's like you got the number correct. Congratulations. So hopefully that should be everything. If anyone needs any help with anything, any explanations, then you can gladly just comment on the video. You can find me on my Discord. You can, just get up with me. Or you can look online if you're interested on solving things on your own. So with that, that's everything. So take it easy.